The rain came down in relentless sheets, hammering the city streets and drowning out the faint hum of electric vehicles that hovered just above the slick pavement. New Cairo was a neon jungle, its towering buildings glowing faintly with holographic ads that promised a better life. Forget your mistakes. Rewrite your past. Memory Corp had turned erasure into an art form. For most, the allure of their services was irresistible. For Ezra Hayes, the mere sight of their logo made his blood boil. He moved quickly, his hood pulled low, blending into the crowd. The Memory Corp tower loomed ahead, a beacon of false hope and corporate greed. It wasn't just a building, it was a fortress, and he'd spent years planning this moment. Every security measure, every guard rotation, every blind spot, he'd memorized it all. Slipping into an alley, Ezra activated his neural interface. His HUD flickered to life, overlaying a map of the tower on his vision. The firewalls protecting its systems were state-of-the-art. But Ezra wasn't your average hacker. He'd spent years cobbling together a contraband rig, loaded with code from before the collapse, back when humanity's digital systems were as vulnerable as they were advanced. He approached the service entrance, his heart pounding. The biometric scanner lit up, and Ezra's implant buzzed as it spoofed the credentials of a maintenance worker. The door slid open with a faint hiss, and he slipped inside. The corridors were cold and sterile, the walls gleaming white. The hum of machinery filled the air, a constant reminder that Memory Corp's heart was mechanical, not human. Ezra moved quickly, avoiding the patrol drones that floated silently through the halls. His implant pinged softly as he disabled each security node, clearing his path to the mainframe. Finally, he reached the central archive, a cavernous room filled with glowing blue pillars of data storage. The faint hum of electricity was louder here, resonating in his chest. He approached the main terminal, his hands trembling slightly as he connected his rig. Come on, he muttered. Scrolling through file after file, thousands of memories flashed before his eyes, each tagged with a name, a date, and a price. It was sickening. Then he saw it, Subject 457X, Rosa Hayes, his sister. His chest tightened. He initiated the download, watching as the progress bar inched forward. This was it. After all these years, he was finally going to bring her back. But as the bar reached 90%, his rig sparked violently. A sharp jolt shot through his skull, and he cried out, clutching his head. The last thing he saw was the bar hitting 100 before everything went black. Ezra's mind swam as he woke to a pounding headache, each beat like an electric pulse through his skull. The familiar sterile glow of Memory Corp's mainframe was gone, replaced by a dim chamber lit with faint, pulsating lights embedded in the walls. The air felt dense, and the faint hum of unseen machinery filled his ears. He tried to move, but his limbs were heavy, like lead. A nauseating ache rolled through his body. You shouldn't have done that, a voice said, melodic but tinged with irritation. Ezra blinked, his vision swimming as he turned his head toward the source of the voice. His breath hitched. A woman stood over him, unlike anyone or anything he'd ever seen. Her eyes glowed a faint violet, their light cutting through the dim haze of the room. Her skin shimmered faintly, as though the stars themselves had been melted into her form, and her silver hair cascaded down her back like liquid light. In her hand, she held a sleek, curved blade that emitted a faint, steady blue glow, its edge humming faintly. Who are you? Ezra croaked. His throat felt raw, his voice barely more than a whisper. The woman tilted her head, studying him with a mix of curiosity and impatience. I'm Nova, she said curtly, her voice sharp but smooth. And apparently, I'm now stuck with you. Ezra's heart pounded as he struggled to sit up. His muscles screamed in protest, his limbs trembling with the effort. Stuck? What are you talking about? He glanced around the room, his vision clearing enough to make out the faintly metallic sheen of the walls. They pulsed faintly, glowing veins of energy running through them, like the whole room was alive. Nova's violet eyes narrowed, and she took a step closer, her luminous presence both mesmerizing and intimidating. The memory you downloaded, it wasn't your sister's, she said flatly. Her words hit him like a gut punch. He froze, the ache in his head momentarily forgotten. No, he said firmly. That's impossible. I saw the tag, it was hers. Nova crossed her arms, the glow of her blade casting faint shadows across her face. You saw what Memory Corp wanted you to see. They don't leave sensitive files lying around for people like you to find. What you accessed was a decoy, a shield for something much more valuable. Ezra shook his head, disbelief coursing through him. What could possibly be more valuable than her memory? What are you saying? Nova sighed, the faintest hint of exasperation flashing across her face. What you downloaded wasn't a single memory. It wasn't even human. It was me, a fragment of my consciousness, locked away in their system. His chest tightened. You're saying, you're in my head? Nova took a step back, her gaze steady and piercing. Not just me, she said softly, her voice losing some of its sharpness. My memories, my life, my war. You've connected to something far more dangerous than you realize. Ezra struggled to process her words. How? How is that even possible? Nova gestured around the room, her movements fluid and precise. Memory Corp didn't just steal from humans. They've been extracting memories from my people for years. Our memories aren't just data, they're power. By locking pieces of us away, they've been weaponizing what makes us who we are. Ezra's mind reeled, the weight of her revelation pressing down on him. Why would they do that? What could they possibly gain from something like this? Nova's expression darkened, and for a moment, her glowing eyes seemed almost sad. Control. Manipulation. Imagine implanting a memory into someone's mind that isn't theirs, shaping their beliefs, their fears, their loyalties. My people's memories are more than just information. They're a tool, a weapon. Her words sent a chill down Ezra's spine. He stared at her, his voice barely a whisper. Why would they have your memories? What are you to them? Nova's lips pressed into a thin line, and she turned away, her silver hair catching the faint light. A soldier, she said finally. A piece of a war your kind isn't supposed to know about. Ezra froze. A war? What kind of war? She turned back to him, her expression unreadable. The kind that never ends. Before he could respond, his mind was assaulted by a barrage of images, starships cutting through alien skies, and cities crumbling under fire, and Nova herself standing amidst the chaos, her blade glowing as she fought off enemies he couldn't identify. The images weren't just vivid, they were overwhelming, each one accompanied by a flood of emotions he couldn't control. Fear, anger, loss, determination. What is this? He gasped, clutching his head. My memories, Nova said simply, her tone devoid of sympathy. They're bleeding into yours. You didn't just steal data. You accessed a living fragment of my mind, and now it's tangled with yours. Ezra groaned, trying to push the images away, but they were relentless. He could feel the weight of the blade in his hand, the sting of sweat and blood, and the searing pain of a wound across his side. It wasn't real, none of it was, but it felt like it was. How do I make it stop? He asked, his voice desperate. Nova crouched in front of him, her gaze softening slightly. You don't, she said. Not until we're free of this place. And even then, it might not be possible. Her words sent a new wave of panic through him. What do you mean? Are you saying I'm stuck with this forever? Nova's expression remained calm, but there was a flicker of something in her eyes. Guilt, perhaps, or regret, maybe. But right now, you should be more worried about getting out of here alive. Ezra swallowed hard, forcing himself to meet her gaze. And why are you helping me? You don't even know me. Nova tilted her head, a faint smile ghosting across her lips. Because if you die, I die too. And trust me, I'm not ready for that. The faint hum of the room grew louder, and a flicker of red light illuminated the far wall. Nova's smile disappeared, replaced by a sharp, focused expression. She stood quickly, her blade igniting with a low hum. They're coming, she said. And if they catch us, we'll both wish we were dead. Ezra struggled to his feet, his muscles still trembling. What do we do? Nova glanced at him, her violet eyes blazing. We fight, and we run. For the first time, Ezra saw something in her that he couldn't quite name, a glimmer of determination that bordered on hope. And despite the chaos in his mind, he felt a spark of something he hadn't felt in years. Trust. Ezra's head felt like it was splitting in two. Waves of pain coursed through his skull, But the worst part wasn't the agony, it was the images. Flashes of places he had never seen, faces he didn't know, and battles he hadn't fought poured into his consciousness. The memories came in rapid bursts, vivid and overwhelming. Starships lit up alien skies, their sleek hulls trailing streaks of fire as they weaved through fleets of enemy vessels. Planets were scorched, their surfaces crumbling under the weight of orbital bombardments. The worst was the emotions tied to the memories. Fear and adrenaline raced through his veins, mingling with a strange sense of pride and loss. Ezra gritted his teeth, clutching his head as he staggered. He felt like he was drowning in someone else's life. "What the hell is happening to me?" he gasped. Nova stood a few feet away, her plasma blade held loosely in one hand. She didn't look at him, her violet eyes scanning the chamber as though expecting danger to strike at any moment. The faint glow of the blade lit her face, casting sharp shadows across her features. For a moment, Ezra thought she was ignoring him. Then she spoke, her voice quiet and measured. "You accessed more than a memory. Ezra, you tapped into my core, a piece of my consciousness. What you're seeing, what you're feeling, are fragments of my life bleeding into yours." Ezra's knees buckled, and he dropped to the floor, his breathing ragged. This isn't normal. This can't be happening." Nova turned to him, her expression calm but not unkind. "It's not normal for you. For me, it's a part of who I am. My people don't just store memories. We live through them. Every moment, every decision, every emotion, it's imprinted in our minds, tied to our identity. When Memory Corp stole from me, they took more than data. They took pieces of me." Ezra looked up at her, his vision blurred. "Why would they do that? Why you?" Nova's lips pressed into a thin line, and she knelt in front of him, her glowing eyes locking onto his. "Because our memories are more than history. They're power. And Memory Corp isn't just selling memories to the highest bidder. They're using them, shaping people, controlling them." Ezra stared at her, struggling to process her words. The images in his mind hadn't stopped, each one pulling him deeper into her world. He saw her standing on the deck of a starship, shouting orders as her crew scrambled to respond to an incoming barrage. He felt the weight of responsibility on her shoulders, the crushing burden of knowing lives depended on her decisions. "You were a soldier," he said, the words slipping out before he could stop them. Nova tilted her head slightly. "I still am. My war didn't end when they stole from me. It only changed." Ezra pressed his palms against his temples, trying to block out the flood of sensations. "How do I stop this? How do I get my mind back?" Nova's expression softened, and she rested a hand on his shoulder. "You don't," she said simply. "Not completely. What's happening to you isn't just a side effect of the download. It's a bond. My memories have merged with yours, and that connection isn't something you can undo." Ezra shook his head, panic rising in his chest. "No. No. There has to be a way. This isn't my life, it's yours." Nova stood, her movements fluid and graceful. "It's ours now," she said. "The memories you carry aren't just fragments. They're pieces of something larger, something Memory Corp has been hiding for years." Ezra struggled to his feet, his legs trembling. "What could they possibly want with your memories? What are they planning?" Nova's expression darkened, and she turned away, pacing the length of the chamber. Control. Manipulation. Imagine implanting memories into someone who didn't live them, making them believe they were a soldier, a hero, or even a monster. Memory Corp has been using my people's memories to shape humanity's future, to rewrite your history. Ezra's chest tightened. The weight of her words settled over him like a lead blanket. "How do you know this?" Nova stopped and glanced back at him, her violet eyes glowing faintly. "Because I've seen it before. My people, we've been at war for generations. Memory Corp wasn't the first to steal from us. They won't be the last." The images in Ezra's mind shifted again. He saw Nova standing on a desolate battlefield, her blade glowing as she fought off waves of enemies. He felt the heat of the explosions around her, the searing pain of a wound across her side. But there was more than pain. There was resilience, determination, strength. He staggered, leaning against the wall for support. "I can't handle this," he muttered. "It's too much." Nova stepped closer, her presence steady and grounding. "You can," she said firmly. Because you have to. Ezra looked at her, his breath catching. There was something in her voice, something in the way she stood, that gave him a glimmer of hope. Despite the chaos in his mind, he felt an inexplicable pull toward her, a connection that went beyond words. "What do we do now?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. Nova's gaze hardened, and she ignited her blade. "We get out of here," she said, "and we figure out how to stop them." The hum of the blade filled the silence, and Ezra felt a surge of determination. He didn't understand what was happening to him, but for the first time, he didn't feel alone. Together, they stepped toward the unknown, their bond growing stronger with each passing moment. The alarms blared, their piercing wails echoing through the cold corridors of the Memory Corp facility. Red lights strobed, bathing everything in an ominous glow. Ezra's breath came in ragged gasps as he stumbled forward, his head pounding with Nova's memories blending into his own. Nova moved ahead of him, her plasma blade glowing faintly. She sliced through security drones with calculated precision, sparks flying as their lifeless forms crumpled to the floor. Her voice was sharp but steady. "Keep up." "Ezra, we don't have much time." "I'm trying," he snapped, narrowly dodging a stun bolt from a nearby turret. His neural implant buzzed as he disabled the turret, its hum falling silent. At the end of the corridor, Nova paused, her glowing eyes scanning the map projected from her wrist device.
"The exit's 2 levels down."
"But they'll seal the facility any minute." Ezra nodded, forcing himself to push through the pain. "Let's move." They descended a stairwell, but heavy footsteps in clinking armor echoed below. Nova raised a hand to halt him. Guards. Peering down, Ezra spotted a squad of heavily armed soldiers blocking the passage. "We can't fight them all," he whispered. Nova's jaw tightened, and without hesitation, she ignited her blade. "We don't have a choice." In a blur of light and motion, Nova launched into the fray. Her blade deflected plasma bolts as she danced through the guards, her movements precise and deadly. Sparks flew, and shouts filled the air as her strikes dismantled their formation. More guards poured in, overwhelming her. "Nova!" Ezra shouted, his heart racing. Desperation spurred him into action. He hacked into the facility's lighting grid, plunging the stairwell into darkness. In the faint light of her blade, Nova moved like a shadow, her attacks invisible until they landed. When the last guard fell, Nova extinguished her blade, her chest heaving. "Let's go," she said. They reached the exit, only to find the heavy steel doors sealed tight. Ezra's neural implant buzzed as he connected to the keypad. A warning flashed across his HUD. "Unauthorized access detected. Lockdown initiated. They're sealing us in," he said. Panic rising, Nova glanced at the corridor behind them, her blade igniting again. "Then we make our stand." Before Ezra could respond, a deep rumble shook the facility. The walls vibrated, dust falling from above. Ezra's HUD lit up with a new warning. Energy surge detected. "What's happening?" he asked. Nova's face darkened. "They've activated the failsafe. They're going to wipe the facility." Ezra's stomach dropped. "What do we do?" Nova grabbed his arm. "We take out the failsafe. It's in the core." The facility shook as they sprinted back to the central archive. The glowing pillars of data storage flickered erratically. The room filled with a low, ominous hum. At the center of the chamber stood the failsafe, a massive device covered in glowing glyphs. "We have to overload it," Nova said. Ezra connected to the device, his implant buzzing as he navigated its defenses. The glyphs resisted, shifting and pulsing like a living thing. "I can't do this alone." Nova placed her hand on his shoulder, grounding him. "You're not alone." Together, they pushed deeper into the system. The glyphs unraveled, and the device began to tremble. Its hum grew louder, the light from the glyphs intensifying. "Now!" Nova shouted. Ezra triggered the final sequence, and the device exploded in a blinding flash of light. The force knocked them both to the floor, the chamber shaking violently. When the dust settled, the glowing pillars were dark, and the alarms had stopped. Ezra sat up, his body aching. "Did we?" Nova nodded, a faint smile on her lips. "We did." As they stumbled out of the facility, the first rays of dawn broke over the horizon. The battle was over, but Ezra knew it was only the beginning. Together, they had stopped Memory Corp's failsafe, but their fight was far from finished. And for the first time, he wasn't afraid,